also going to send you this link in case you want to go on YouTube.
I'm gonna jump to the googly Google. What am I jumping to? Yeah, the Google Doc. I know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Hello, anyone who's out there in Streamland. This is Jack and John with the Cardboard Herald. For the Cardboard Herald?
Adjacent to the Cardboard Herald.
Adjacent to. And this is the inaugural Off the Table revival. This is setting things in motion for time immemorial to see if we can figure out how the hell to stream, which is a thing that people do on the internet. So, John is here co-hosting the show. The intent is that John and I are going to be getting together on a regular basis, and we're going to be doing the discussion about the board games of all types. And you may have seen John on our channel. Let's see, what are some of the topics that we've hit on, John?
I wore a top hat. I don't know what we talked about, but I did wear a top hat.
There was a point in which you were wearing a top hat and like a mask over half your face.
We don't talk about where that came from. That's just one of many things that come from too many convention attendances.
Yeah. So John has been on the channel. We've talked about the top 10 iconic games that we've never played, our favorite, I believe we talked about our favorite cooperative games, we talked about our favorite area control games, and he's shown up in some reviews here and there. Really, John and I have been really good friends and gamer buddies for ages at this point. We just hit the 10-year mark official on hanging out together, and John's the only person who I know who is as passionate about games as me and knows even more about games than me, probably. I don't know. And we have similar origins. We get along together. So we're going to talk about stuff. Are you ready for that, John?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Excellent. So what is off the table? Well, a little bit of announcements before we kind of get into some of the things that we're individually covering today. Off the Table was a weekly show that the Cardboard Herald used to do. It was a really tight 10-minute weekly news show in which we would sometimes have some guest spots from other people come on and drop some knowledge. We would talk about news going on in the tabletop gaming universe. And it was grueling. It was one of the most demanding things that I'd done with the Cardboard Herald, and it never had the audience participation that I really wanted. Some people really loved the show, but it didn't give me the vibe that I wanted out of it. And it took until recently that I realized, you know what, I still really like doing topical stuff and having these discussions, but having it in a live stream format would allow it to be this longer kind of nebulous thing where we could talk about anything we need to, and yet address the audience as needed. We could have some participation. There's all kinds of reasons why this seemed like a good format to do. So the hope is we're going to live stream this on a weekly basis. And we're going to pay attention to chat. We're going to ask questions or answer questions at least as we have time and to stay on top of things. I don't know about John's sense of brevity here, but anytime that I say, yo, John, you want to record something for half an hour, it ends up being an hour. So we're going to shoot for half an hour and then probably go about an hour per episode. But the discussion is worth it. We talk about all kinds of great stuff. I think there's a lot of great perspective that we can share, that audience can share, and this kind of gives us that open environment that isn't as rigid in order to kind of have those more nuanced conversations. So that's the hope. That's the idea here behind Off the Table. Now, John, have you ever streamed anything before?
Can't say that I have now.
Okay. Yeah, me neither, aside from testing out some stuff recently, but I'm going to hit a transition button over here in OBS. We have a little bit of a delay on the live stream between me doing something in Meat Space and it happening in digital space. But if all things worked out, that actually brought us over to John and I and Chrome on the page, the most sophisticated of OBS setups that can possibly be. And we got like an agenda, we got some links, we got a background of Kyle Farron's artwork for Root, which I'm hoping isn't a problem for me to have in the background on a live stream. And yeah, I think we're going to get into some discussion. If you notice on the thumbnail and in the title, Battlestar Atlantica is what our main topic is here today. The recently announced Unfathomable, the incredibly hard word for me to say, from Fantasy Flight Games. But before we get into that, we're going to hop through some news. We're going to get through a couple announcements, and then we're going to just dive into talking about that. And John actually did some research. We got an audience question. You did some research in preparation for this, right?
Oh, a little bit, yeah. You might want to do your own fact checking, but I did. So this was about metal coins, right? This is the question we're tackling.
Well, towards the end, we'll get to the audience questions there. I just wanted to tease the audience with the possibility of some metal coin discussion, and that you actually did some research. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to
I'll be name dropping university studies even. With an air of legitimacy.
John, your audio, it's getting awry, it's getting staticky. We're having craziness. It might be a connection issue. See, this is the meat grind that you work out when you are doing streaming live and, tempting people with having to watch all this business.
Okay, how are we doing now?
That is not sounding good. It was sounding so good earlier when we were testing it. It's all, you're getting that Geth voice again. It's like Mass Effect. I've been playing a lot of Mass Effect on account of the Legendary Edition, and it's like Project Overlord or the Geth. It's very distressing. Let's test it again.
All right, testing?
No, it's horrible. Why don't you see if you can go into your Zoom settings and switch over to the audio input being your webcam. See if that fixes anything. That way you have the audio output of your headphones.
Hey, what are we doing now?
Oh, that's even worse. That is significantly worse.
That's the webcam right there.
That is
okay. We're back to headset. Why does this kind of stuff always work at test, and then as soon as you go live, it completely fails?
Yeah, well, we had a little bit of that earlier, but it seemed to cut out, and we had some live discussion, and it wasn't going into that. So, meanwhile, let's see what we can do in order to work around this.
Let's try dropping the headset here.
We'll see if that works out. This is what everyone came for.
Any improvement here?
Brooke Nelson says it's not awful. Let's hear it again, John. Now I'm getting no audio.
Okay.
No. Okay, I think it's good.
All right. I'm just not going to move or touch anything.
Yeah, there's a little bit of crackling. I wonder if there's some feedback loop that's happening, but it wasn't terrible earlier. So I'm not sure what sort of situation is coming up. As long as you have the live stream muted, if you have it open, right?
I don't have it open right now, so I'm not getting any loops on my end.
Okay. Well, seems like we might as well continue. Cool. Well, the last two announcements I wanted to get to, if I go over here to Chrome and go up to the top here, just a couple quick things. One, we have a Discord group for the Cardboard Herald now, which there's been some great discussion in that so far. I really appreciate people joining into that. If you want to communicate with us in order to help this whole thing grow, not just off the table, but the Cardboard Herald in general, that's a great place because it's a little bit more organized. It's not so formal. I think that's a good place for conversation to happen, especially if this does grow and we have a lot of live chat. Then I don't know that I'll be able to get to every audience question. But if you ask something in Discord, then John and I can participate in that a little bit more and make sure that we get that feedback onto the show. Also, I don't know if Discord allows for like polls and that kind of stuff, but I may ask for like focused topic discussion. We'll get into that a little bit more. And then lastly, Patreon. I don't want to plug this too much. You're doing enough just by being here. You're doing enough by joining the Discord. But I am trying to make a bigger push on the Patreon as far as, giving access to early videos and that kind of stuff for patrons. I've been this week putting up our Veil Wraith review, or our Adventure Tactics review. Normally, I put things in the can and then just put them into the release schedule because you don't want to release all of your videos and all of your hard work at once and then be like, oh man, I have nothing to post later on. But they're usually done ahead of time, sometimes a week or two ahead of the time that they actually get released. So I'm trying to do that more often. If you want the full scoop on Cardboard Herald stuff, and you want to help us grow and, just support this, because it is a costly endeavor between cameras and microphones and conventions and Zoom Pro and all that kind of stuff, that's a good way to do it. So I think that kind of covers it for the announcements. Do you have anything to announce, John? Am I just skipping by here?
No, I'm taking this opportunity to watch keep an eye on the chat and see how we're doing.
Okay, sounds good. Audio's sounding good too, by the way.
I just have to tilt my head the right way. As an extensive gamer in the digital space, I think this headset might be wearing out, and it might be time to replace it.
Okay, well, there we go. We might have to get a separate microphone set up. See, there's the official streaming microphone. I'm sure that Yeti Blue is at this point the most used streaming microphone that's out there. So, maybe we have to get you set up with that. Okay, so as far as some news, there are some things happening. It was E3 this weekend and this week, but in spite of the concentration of the gaming world being on digital games, there was quite a bit of recent announcements having to do with tabletop games. One, I was pleased to see that Dragomino won the Kinderspiel Award this year. The Kinderspiel is the best children's game from the Spiel des Jahres from the German Game Awards. They've announced the nominees for the other awards, the Spiel proper, as well as the Critterspiel, which I believe is the advanced strategy game, but they haven't announced the winners. Now, this is a Bruno Cathala co-design joint, so this has got to be the 700th Bruno Cathala win for various gaming awards. That guy has been in so many things as of late, but he co-designed it with Marie and Wilfred Fort, and this is it's like a children's version of King Domino, which of course was a monster, and I think won the Spiel in its year proper. John, do you ever pay attention to awards on the side of boxes or anything like that? It's an interesting thing, a marketing thing that a lot of publishers want to proudly display. It's a Spiel winner, or it's winner of a Golden Geek Award, or the Dice Tower Seal of Excellence, that kind of stuff. Has that ever swayed you?
I don't think it has. I'll be honest. if I were going to look at those sorts of things, I think of those as being more in the realm of the games that I choose for my family experiences. Maybe it's more a useful indicator for that. So I would definitely take this as a high recommendation. My daughter's a little bit older than this. At this point, she'd be playing King Domino by now. But back in the day, I think I might take this as a good indicator for that kind of game. Maybe not for my own personal preferences.
I was talking a while ago on the Cardboard Herald in an interview with the owner of Frosted Games, and he's from Germany. And we were actually talking about the spiel and how important it is for the German as well as general European game audience. Like the recognition of being a spiel winner is tens of thousands of copies more will be sold just on the prestige alone and the press associated with that. There are a significant number of families that will just buy the new Spiel winner every year. I don't know if that's still true to this day, and if that's true for the Kinderspiel. But this is a great looking game. I haven't played it yet, but some of the past winners, particularly like some of Haba's recent releases, the Dragon's Breath and Valley of the Vikings, have crushed it in my house. So I think this award has historically been pretty spot on. Whereas the Spiel proper, you got some winners like Dominion, Settlers of Catan, you have your Kingdom Builders and Camel Up. I think there's a lot more debate on whether those are automatic recommendations and who those are recommendations for, which is why I think the Critter Spiel, I think it's the Critter Spiel was created, which Wingspan won. That was pretty cool.
Well, and just as a little side note, I will say that we take those recommendations really highly when we're forming the roster of games for our Learn to Play area at the local convention. And every year we feature at least one or two.
Right, yeah. So for those of you who don't know, who are getting up on your John knowledge, because I share everything about myself on this channel, and getting used to John as a co-host here, John is heavily involved with the Platypus Con here in Juneau, Alaska, which is the largest Alaskan tabletop gaming convention. It's a fantastic convention. We've had designers come up for it. Particularly last year was really great to see some panels and stuff. But John has historically been like man in charge of, well, a lot of day-to-day operations in general, but the Learn to Play area specifically. When you're doing the Learn to Play area, do you try to target like different audience levels? Like, you got to have your kids game over here. You got to have your midweight game over here. I've seen you have everything from Everdell and Terraforming Mars to photosynthesis. I've seen there in the past. Hamster roll,
yeah, side by side with Terraforming Mars, yeah. So you can definitely see that we span a lot of brackets there. No, it's exactly that. It's we usually try to have varied player counts because the convention's all about engagement. In the middle of probably the worst part of the time for Juneau in January, right? Our weather's not so great, so the idea is get people out as a community engaging with games, and so we have 2-player games. We have those light, easy entry games with maybe 5-minute rule explanations, and then we have some of the deeper strategy games working their way up to something a little. We usually have maybe one heavy game going at any time. Like the Terraforming Mars is a little heavier for that area.
And if you want a little bit of Platypus gaming flavor, the Cardboard Herald has done some interviews at Platypus Con itself, including one of a Mr. John being the rep for the con at the show floor itself. So in interest of time, making sure that we're not being too elaborate in our discussion of Dragomino, our very first news topic. There were a couple of things that I thought were interesting, and I think they're going to kind of tie into some of our discussion later about Unfathomable, the word that I still cannot say properly. That's Orleans was picked up by Capstone Games, which more interestingly to me is that Tasty Minstrel Games will no longer have Orleans. And that Z-Man has announced that Tales of Arabian Nights is getting one more print run, and then that's kind of it for Tales of Arabian Nights from them, which is interesting to have that kind of announcement. I haven't seen many like, yo, get it while it's hot because it's not going to be available anymore announcements, but it feels like the end of an era, and I don't know how I feel about that. All these exchanges and changes, though I guess in the case of Tales of Arabian Nights, it's something leaving the great behemoth of a company that is Asmodee at this point.
Yeah, it feels a little like maybe when Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight parted ways, and I wonder if there'll be a rush on that last print run. Although, the argument can be made that everybody who's going to play it pretty much already has it. I mean, I've played it certainly early in my gaming upbringing, and so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, and I'm sure it'll live on somewhere else. This is the kind of game that doesn't go away permanently, I don't think.
Right. And this kind of is a follow-up to a previous story that Steve over here at Z-Man Games had put forward a few months ago, even before we were talking about doing this off the table thing. Steve had announced that some of the classic Reiner Knizia and I think other classic Euro game designer games were leaving the catalog. And I don't know too much about the inside baseball of this, but I wonder if there's an aspect of the designer, especially a designer like Reiner Knizia with he has the tagline of over 500 games have been designed by Reiner Knizia. I wonder if he has licensing agreements with these publishers, and just that license was expiring, and the company itself had decided, what, we're just not renewing the license. So it was already kind of in the works, and just a question if they were going to continue it, as opposed to a lot of companies that, just properly own the design, which I think is kind of the norm as it happens in the industry at this point. But yeah, interesting stuff. Some real classic titles are leaving the grips of Asmodee, which I there's a lot of amazing people that work at Asmodee, and a lot of employees of former smaller companies, or what FFG became, Asmodee North America. They're really great, amazing people, and gamer focus. But I'm surprised that if given the option, these companies would let go of some of these evergreen titles. But maybe, again, that was part of the license agreement, that they had to actually keep it in publication in order to keep it going. Maybe I'll see if I can get some inside scoop on that at some point. Brooke Nelson is asking a question here. John, did I meet you at Shucks 2018?
Absolutely, Brooke, and I do remember you. I had some questions for you about getting started on social media and some of your time over at, if I'm not mistaken, as the social media person for Fantasy Flight at the time. And coincidentally, I was volunteering at Shucks to in their vendor area.
Yeah, well, Brooke is awesome. Brooke is actually a rep of Leader Games. So Brooke has a lot of social media knowledge, and I rely on Brooke's expertise on quite a few things. I bounce things off of Brooke time to time. So we're really glad to have you in the audience here. But Brooke, of course, is gamer first. So continuing our deliberation, I gotta get used to multiple windows. I feel like I'm DJing at this point. I have my stream window where I can take a look at chat, but then I have the OBS, and then I have this Chrome. There's a lot going on. Streamers, this is no joke. two last quick announcements before we kind of get into the meat of it, or really three here. One, Dune House Secrets was announced by Portal Games, which is interesting. We're both Dune fans, and how can you not report on that? But it's a reimplementation of Detective, a modern crime board game, which in some ways smacks of something like Love Letter. You know, there's a million love letters, and it's great that there's a million love letters, but seeing a re-implementation for a movie tie-in on Dune is interesting. But Portal Games releases a lot of cool titles, and I know that people love Detective. I've personally not played it. Have you played Detective at all?
I haven't. No, I saw it at a convention. Haven't had a chance to.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where that goes with Dune. And then I had to put this on here. WizKids announced Zombie Princess with the amazing tagline of, "Once upon a time, she was looking for love. Now she's looking for lunch." And the game just looks like a delight. I mean, this is ridiculous how cute this game looks. It looks like a tile-laying competitive game where you're trying to distract and disorient the zombie princess, and be the first person to escape this maze that you're building as you go along, which is kind of a different take on tile laying. So I'm excited to see. Seems like something that would be a nice light family game. So I couldn't help but have that in here. It looks pretty. It tonally sounds fun. And, you know, it's always good to highlight some light games in the face of FFG behemoths.
Yeah, but I'm kind of itching to get to the next one, honestly. As cool as that looks, I am really excited to talk about the art design of Now or Never. The box blows me away. I love that color scheme.
Yeah, I actually specifically was going to bring up that box. So there's a couple cool things about this. So first off, the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but Red Raven Games has historically been a Kickstarter company, and this is a pre-order for Now or Never. And the previous games in the series, Above and Below, Near and Far, they've been Kickstarters. And I think Sleeping Gods was a Kickstarter. So it's interesting to see them making this leap into just trusting that they can fully knock this out on pre-orders alone, which is really cool. And the box art, yeah, no kidding. Ryan Laucat has had amazing illustrations in all of Red Raven's games, but it is not an easy thing to have a red and green color scheme and not have it scream Christmas.
Yeah, no, this is impressive. In a world where, you know, we get 1,000 new games a year, this one would catch my eye at any convention if I walk past it. On the strength of the art alone.
Yeah, one of the things that I would like to see out of this series, personally, I played Near and Far quite a bit. I like the storybook adventure system that it has, but it still never really clicked as a competitive game to me. And this game is still competitive. I mean, it's the third game in a series, so they're sticking with a shtick, even though there is significant difference in the overall structure of Above and Below versus Near and Far. But, you know, I like my adventure games to be cooperative. I like my Eldritch Horrors, my Agents of Smersh, you know, I like my you know, whatever adventure game you take your pick. I like them to be cooperative. They seem to be trending
that way. You know, you look at Journeys to Middle Earth and the New Descent. You know, those kinds of titles are trending towards more cooperative, because I think you'll find that, yeah, if you're sharing a story together, it's better to be in on it rather than head to head.
Right. So this game is, I think it's going to sell gangbusters. It was the top of the board game hotness. Red Raven has proven themselves quite a bit. Ryan has proven himself and his entire team time and time again. So they have an extremely loyal following, and I'm really excited to see this evolution of the company and to go to a pre-order focus. I don't necessarily have a problem with Kickstarter. I mean, there are some companies that I really love that still use Kickstarter as their primary platform. I mean, thinking about Greater Than Games, Leader Games. I mean, they have monster hits like Spirit Island and Root and Oath just came out. And, you know, at this point, I've kind of made my peace with Kickstarter as like a pre-order system, so to speak. But it is cool to see companies have the ability to pivot and do a more traditional model even in today's market. I don't know. Are you ever off put by companies doing Kickstarter at this point? Like, are you a purist? We've had lots of discussions. There's a lot of people out there who are like, this isn't what Kickstarter was designed for. Kickstarter is supposed to be blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but I think the thing is there's plenty of space out there that Kickstarter still works as designed. I mean, there are still small productions out there. You don't hear about them as often. They're making $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 instead of, you know, 1.4 million or, you know, what, and that's small potatoes for a cool mini, you know, Kickstarter. But right. I mean, a great example is Kemet, the Matago title. You know, that second edition went to Kickstarter. I don't know. They're a smaller operation. I don't know that they could have published something with the more deluxe components that they have in this second edition without going to a somewhat of a pre-order system. And honestly, Kickstarter comes with a lot of free overhead of publicity. I mean, it's a really, I hate to say the FOMO works for it really well as a good thing, but when it's a game you want to see succeed, I kind of don't mind that. It really, Kickstarter knows how to generate a hype train. You know, whether it's stretch goals or daily updates and all that stuff. I don't know that you can do that with a pre-order campaign on your own website the same as well.
And at this point, it's like an embedded social network. You know, like the audience is there. I talked with Carla Kopp of Weird Giraffe Games and Galactic Raptor Games and like 16 other companies, because I feel like every other day she's starting a new company. But I talked to her specifically about GameFound as a new platform for crowdfunding games. And even though their shtick is that this is free for publishers as opposed to taking the big cut that Kickstarter does, the embedded, entrenched population that are going to Kickstarter on a daily basis, because that's where you go to look at new games. That's where you get notifications. You have all the history of backing and all that kind of stuff. You know, that she, at least at this time, deems it worth the cost of Kickstarter. I guess until the point in which it isn't. You know, GameFound grows enough, then hopefully they can have that same infrastructure as well.
And all you have to do is take a quick look at there is internet journalism dedicated to Kickstarter releases. I don't have to rely on just a publisher of Kickstarters I've backed. I can get news feeds on what is hot on Kickstarter fed to me. You know, until GameFound has that kind of following, it's not as big of a competition, I don't think.
Right.
Which isn't to say I don't have them feeding the information to now.
Okay, well, we got some things to talk about. We got Unfathomable. We have to bring this sucker up. So, what is this game? How long have you been following this? Because they've been teasing this for a while. When did this first come on your radar, John?
Oh, 6 months ago. I mean, as soon as they stopped printing Battlestar Galactica, you knew you'd eventually get a new edition. I mean, I'd take your pick. And I'd call it very fathomable. I mean, this is to me, it's an obvious move. Like, it's, you know, I don't know the nature of the business as far as licenses go, and you know, BSG has been out of the nerd consciousness for a while. Or maybe the nerd consciousness is still very hot on BSG, but maybe the mainstream consciousness isn't. I don't know. You know, it's been out of there. I mean, it's like, when are they going to stop making Game of Thrones games? In a couple more years, when that sort of dies down. So maybe it was not worth picking up the license. Maybe it wasn't available. and they're pivoting to their in-house public domain, Lovecraft licensing or lack of licensing, I guess.
When in doubt, just slap some Cthulhu on it, and you got yourself a banger.
On there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just slide a Shoggoth under the door, and you're good to go. So this is a very obvious re-implementation of the Battlestar Galactica game, the beloved and old Battlestar Galactica game in the Arkham Files universe. And they had been teasing this for a while. As early as like a year ago, you were seeing posts on Reddit of people saying, hey, my buddy, my uncle who works at Nintendo has been playtesting a new Battlestar Galactica game that supposedly is like a Cthulhu game. And it seems like a pretty obvious move. I mean, this has been consistently one of the highest ranked board games of all time. It had been out of production for a while. Like you mentioned, the licensing disputes. I think the big question, which to a degree is still lingering, is how much would they change it? Because Battlestar Galactica is still a great game, but it is an old game, and design philosophy has evolved considerably since the original release of that game. The market and who you cater to has changed dramatically from the time when BSG originally was like, hey, let's just get some nerds playing some secret mafia in space. And if you look at this preview, like you go through this, you can see almost a one-to-one comparison with all of the elements of BSG. You have you are a human versus you are a hybrid. You
roll
have
cards,
food,
skill tests.
yeah.
You can see the shape of the ship itself. It's very reminiscent of the Battlestar Galactica. The way they move around the board. The only difference I can see so far is maybe the boarding actions. You can see the mini. They've gone out the gate with more deluxe miniatures, and you can see the miniatures might be boarding the ship somehow. So maybe that's a little different.
Right, and then I noticed here on I'm going to be terrible at pronouncing this, but their revealed character Kailani Tatupu has demoralize when you reveal as a traitor. If you are not in the brig, lose one's sanity, which your characters in BSG didn't have like a health metric. And Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, you typically have both health and sanity.
Wonder if sanity's morale, maybe? In this? Maybe it's a group sanity?
It could be
Or
group sanity,
do they have
but
stats I couldn't see.
Exactly. And it could also correspond to like some card draw stuff. That's probably one of the resources that you're interacting with. There are a couple really awesome things about this game that make me want to play it right away. I mean, the visual aesthetic is great. They show the backs of the cards. Battlestar Galactica is a great game. You and I have both gotten rid of our respective copies of Battlestar Galactica at this point because you can only have so many games in your collection at one point, and unless you're just filling your house entirely, you got to make some hard choices even about good games. But this may revitalize some things, especially if they change it. I mean, almost every major game at this point has to cater to two players in some way. There were official variants for two players, but is that going to be successful? What about fully cooperative? Will there be a fully cooperative mode in this game? I mean, FFG themselves have kind of steered away from having a lot of games where it's one versus all or team versus team in the way that this is. So I wonder if they'll have more considerations for widening this game's reach.
Well, I think it also begs the question too, and I hate to be the negative person in the room, and this isn't wholly negative. I love BSG when we played it. I love that era of my gaming, but I look back on it and I think it epitomizes a design philosophy shift. I feel like in the last decade and a half, where BSG had some really amazing high points,
some of the best adrenaline pulse pounding bluffing moments of staring my friend in the face and telling him, "No, I'm not a Cylon. You're a Cylon," and having everybody at the table believe me, or not, as it were. But the thing is those high points come at 20-minute intervals sometimes in that game, and over time you start to see game design really looking to capitalize on how can I get the high points more often. And I'm going to throw back to my hotness of the week. Whitehall Mysteries is exactly that, taking the Whitechapel design that Fantasy Flight had previously, slimming it down and trimming it down into Whitehall, where I'm getting the same pulse pounding moments in that game at a faster drip because they've cut out all of the middle game. And I wonder how much of this is going to do that. And if it doesn't, then I speculate, how much do we really need this? Or is this just for people who have heard about BSG and haven't realized that maybe we moved on? I don't know.
Well,
tell me I'm wrong.
Even in our chat here, Don Clemson says, I've never played BSG. And it's good to keep perspective. I mean, you and I have been playing games together for about 10 years, and one of the earliest games that we played together was BSG. And even at that time, BSG was already a thing. I mean, if I go over here to, let's go take a peek, because we can be informed about this, right?
2008.
Yeah, 2008.
We didn't pick it up until probably 2011.
Yeah, I think it was a tie-in with the show as the show was on, which is ridiculous. There are so many people who have joined this ever-expanding tabletop gaming realm. There are so many more gamers that probably never had a chance to get a copy of Battlestar Galactica. And even the ones who may have had the opportunity to, again, some of the things that we talked about kind of limit the space. It's a big, heavy game. There's a ton of rules overhead, which I hope their focus on real clean and easy to read rule books is a big boon for them here. And you need people who are willing to put up with the time investment on that. And realistically, Battlestar Galactica was a game for 5 players at least. I mean, you could kind of get away with 4. And that's just not really how modern games are designed, so to speak, nowadays. I like when they are. I like niche things, and I like that if Asmodee is sticking to their guns here, if FFG, Asmodee North America, is sticking to its guns here, then they are kind of diversifying their catalog and not having it so homogenized. It's a missed opportunity to not have Edward James Olmos in your game. That in itself is a little bit disappointing.
Wait a minute, that's not him on the cover right there? Red boat.
Yeah, exactly. That's the looming Olmos saying, "Let me back on the ship."
Speaking of the cover, I just want to call out one thing before I forget. Props to FFG, and again, I'm not very in on the industry politics of how this works, but it's cool to see that even though you've got the game design credits up there, and I know that's got its own history of including game design credits on games. That didn't used to be a thing, way back when. And designers had to fight to get credit for their work. And so it's cool to see the game design for the new designer. It's also nice to see based on the design by Corey K. I don't bother to say his last name. I'd butcher it. But I've got a lot of games.
Kanitska. That's what I've always said, but I could be saying it wrong. I'm going to rely.
He's went off to do his own thing for Asmodee and his own, and he's got some games coming out. But I've got a lot of old FFG games with his name on it. It's cool to see him still referenced on this because that was him all over BSG. So, yeah,
what a monumental impact on the industry in general that Corey has had. I mean, him and Christian T. Peterson changed the shape of what American gaming is at this point, what it was at the time. I mean, monumental impact on how American games are perceived and, games in general, how they're designed at this point. So I'm actually really excited about this game. Even though my interest in Battlestar Galactica proper had waned, the visual overhaul and the potential for modernization has me really excited about this one, and what it could represent for Asmodee. But it did get me thinking about some other things that are kind of related to like our own tenure as gamers, right? And I was thinking about how Fantasy Flight has at this point taken most of their classic lineup and come out with modernizations of those games. I mean, you have Twilight Imperium 4 out. That's a fairly recent game. And then you have Journeys of Middle Earth, which can be seen as kind of a successor to Middle Earth Quest. And then you have the Marvel Champion stuff and Eldritch Horror or Arkham Horror LCG as modern implementations of the Lord of the Rings system. They're bringing a lot of these games to the forefront, and now we have Battlestar Galactica. I wonder... Oh, even Descent. Even Descent is getting Descent Legends of the Dark, which they're saying this isn't Descent 3rd edition. It totally is Descent 3rd edition. They just don't want to commit to that.
Second edition. This is 3rd edition. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is third edition. I'd call it whatever you want. I'm getting it too.
Right. And so I wonder what things from their classic lineup are they really missing? Like, are they looking at Game of Thrones right now and going like, is it time for a Game of Thrones 3rd edition? That's another one of those older games that even the 2nd edition has been out for ages. And as much as I love that game, it's pretty long in the tooth. It could use a freshen up. And it just so happened that in spite of killing interest in a franchise with the final season of Game of Thrones on HBO, the announcement of a new spin-off show has resurged some of the excitement. So I think there's at least got to be some spitballing going on at the FFG America headquarters where they're like, is now a good time to kind of consolidate everything and release a Game of Thrones 3rd edition?
Or can I offer counterpoint? And I'd love to hear this as a topic that we get some input on Twitter. You know, what older game would you like to see revived? I know it's a doomed effort. Warrior Knights. I know it's a Games Workshop gig. I know that's not, But speaking of games that Corey K touched, I'd love to see Warrior Knights 3rd edition. Okay, guys, Fantasy Flight, can you make good with Games Workshop? Can you make up? Or can you slap some Cthulhu on it and give me something?
The twain shall never meet. The nail was in the coffin when suddenly the WizKids publication of Furia Dracula was happening. That feels like the complete severance of the FFG and Games Workshop relationship. But we'll see. If there's enough money to be made, people will get into it. Related to this game, one, I would love to see Game of Thrones come back. Like that's really cool. If Game of Thrones gets a similar treatment to this, especially if this is successful, because to me that dudes on a map area control game that isn't the 4X TI4 8 to 10 hour game session type of game is a missing spot on the FFG catalog at this point, and they love their tie-ins, so maybe they can get to that. But it did get me thinking about like reskins. Are there other games that have been successful reskins or that we'd want to see as like games brought back even if they couldn't have their original theme? I mean, we just now Ignacy Trewicek over at Portal Games is announcing this Dune game that's a reskin of an existing property. I wonder if there's a lot of opportunity for bringing back some of these older licensed games, which turned out to be really cool, if you just kind of put a different Lovecraftian face on it. I don't know.
It was a fish person all along.
It was a fish person all along. If you could take Warrior Knights and put any theme on it, what would it be?
Gosh, I don't know. I got sidetracked because I was thinking immediately as you brought that up. You know what game I want to see, and go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, Internet, but Android, can I see Android Netrunner is not, we all want it back. and it's not going to be Netrunner anymore, but Android is still out there, right?
Right,
Android universe, in-house universe, great theme, and could work with a lot of things.
And there are a couple games that have that, like Infiltration. Was that the Android game that was kind of like the smaller? Yeah, they really could take advantage of that, and especially with, I don't know, I think there's a resurgence and interest in cyberpunk as a theme, not only because of the video game that came out recently, but you had the new Blade Runner movie came out. I think cyberpunk would be, a hot theme to utilize if they wanted to go for their Android universe. I could get behind it. I played some Warrior Knights with you. I could play an Android Warrior Knights. We could figure that out.
I'd just like to see that theme. If they're going to start slapping their in-house themes on things, or licenses that they've got more involvement with, the Star Wars, Marvel, Game of Thrones type stuff. I'd love to see Android find its way onto some more, reskins, as opposed to maybe, say, fewer tentacles and Shoggoths. Yeah,
and Netrunner has one of the most devoted communities that's out there. Brooke mentions this in here. Yeah, fan expansions, keeping that thing alive, trying to hold the tournaments and everything. And I get it. When you have a system that you are like ride or die for, which I was for Legend of the Five Rings for a while. I was the type of person who's like, you kids are just playing Magic. I play Legend of the Five Rings. It's far more tactical of a game. And I'm not talking about the FFG one. I'm talking about the OG AEG game. But I ended up moving and kind of was no longer part of an active community for that, so hard decisions had to be made. But yeah, those people still playing Netrunner and still obsessing over it. It's awesome to see. And again, I can't imagine that Asmodee is not looking at that as a potential resource to tap. I think at this point, it's just more so, can they, are the dollars worth the investment in that when they could get more dollars in an investment of something else? I don't think it's necessarily like a situation in which, it would be unprofitable to continue Netrunner in some way or to have a similar game, but they got to make their choices. Unfortunately, it was Keyforge, which never quite clicked with me. Did you play Keyforge?
I dabbled a little bit. I got to check it at a convention. I bought a starter pack to mess around with it. It's a novel idea. I love the idea of no overhead in a CCG style game, but ultimately, I just don't have the bandwidth for a game that requires a community like that to keep up with. Or even a dedicated opponent. Hey, if you got into Keyforge as a diehard tomorrow, maybe I'd follow you with it. But also the theming. I'm just the cyberpunk theming or the Asian fantasy theme on L5R. Those are both themes that are much more interesting than. I'm not quite clear what Keyforge theming is.
Skylanders. So we'll say the theme is like Skylanders for teenagers. That's the theme as best I can.
For it, but
amalgamation. Well, let's close it out with a couple questions here, John. Probably the most burning, Dawn72 over at Discord, which may in fact be Don Clemson here. He had some discussion. There was actually a lot of great discussion in the Discord. Ironically enough, Discord discussion. There was some talk about books, and there were games, and the Dice Forge was getting played. There was a lot of cool stuff. But why do we as gamers obsess over metal coins so much? Like, you and I have both invested heavy in metal coins over the years.
In terms of poundage, heavy.
Yeah. So like, what do you think? Why do we have this compulsion to have metal coins oftentimes costing as much of the board games that they're being utilized with in our games? I have some thoughts on this, but I'm curious to hear your own perspective.
I have a couple of thoughts on that. The first is obviously upgrades, bling. Anytime you have
a basic cardboard component and you can upgrade it with something that is cooler looking, well, yeah, that's great. But what if the cardboard is, if the coin looks roughly similar to the cardboard, then it's not a huge upgrade. It's more of a material upgrade, visually speaking. So what makes that, if it's not about upgrading the quality, then why do we just like playing with them? Well, okay, you could also say it increases immersion because, coins are made of metal in the real world. Everybody's at one point in their lives. I mean, I don't know about this generation. My kid probably hasn't handled very much pocket change these days, but pretty much everybody's handled coins at some point. And so you recognize it immediately for what it is, and it increases immersion. But I would also say that there is, and the study that I read, I don't know how applicable it is, but it was one that I remember reading, I don't know, way back when, maybe Psychology 101 class or something. But it was about the weight of objects having some importance in the way we perceive things, even unrelated things. So the study itself was, okay, we're going to hand a volunteer a clipboard that weighs 2 pounds, and we're going to hand another person a volunteer a clipboard that weighs 1 pound, and then we're going to have them rate their opinions of various things, whether it be currency or how much they think a pile of currency is worth, or how important an issue was, or whatever the case was. And in almost every case, they found that the person holding the heavier clipboard seemed to rate everything much more severely, much more serious. So I have to argue that as you're sitting there, you're messing with these metal coins, it does something to you where it instantly becomes more real, more tangible, and more important than if you're just flipping around cardboard chits.
It reminds me of a Mitch Hedberg joke where he was talking about, like, ever notice how something that feels substantial, explaining a joke is, of course, the best way of killing it, especially if you don't remember it all. But he was talking about how something feels substantial as a piece of electronics, and you're like, man, this feels good in your hand. And then you take out the batteries, and then you're like, this is actually just a piece of shit. Like, this is flimsy and unsubstantial. And so I think there's a part of that too. Those look cool, but as soon as you see a tub of all the different coins in a metal form in which there's dimension to them, things are embossed and, the pressings in them, it makes you want to investigate it further. And anything that I think encourages you to want to play with it is going to make you more receptive in general to the immersion of the game, the magic circle, if you will, of sitting around and playing a game. I don't actually feel like I'm in some alternate universe World War I mech steampunk thing when I'm playing Scythe, but it does give a reality to the theme a lot more. And I think the other thing has to do with, like, a certain level of gamer, I guess. I don't want to talk about, like, hardcore gamers versus, entry weight gamers or something like that. But, like, time in the industry, time in playing games and collecting games and that kind of stuff. You tend to see certain patterns of people who are the omni gamers, the people who bring games to their game groups. They start buying every game under the sun. Any game that's fun, I want to own it. And then you realize you own so many games that you're never going to play them all. If you try to play them all, you're not playing the ones that you love the most. And then you start pruning your collection. And then you start thinking about, what if instead of obsessing over quantity of games, what if I try to have the nicest versions of the games that I really love, and have that kind of intimate connection with them, whether that's getting upgraded components or that's having the 3D printer in order to print out really nice inserts. There's something really satisfying about this is getting to some weird places, but like reciprocating the feelings that, the game giveth to you. And so you kind of want to invest yourself in ways with the game, even if it's not an aspect of the mechanical design in playing it.
Pamper my games so that they know I love them.
Exactly.
I mean, you're not wrong. There is a certain psychological feedback loop there that you're just like,
this thing is important to me, and I will demonstrate its importance by laboring on it, but whether it's crafting inserts or whatever.
Right. Well, but before we move on to the next question, you got a shout out for your favorite coins in game?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Kickstarter I backed back in the day, and they've done a million of them now. But personally, I've seen some other good ones out there. I like the. I'm gonna see if anybody can even see this. Bam! This is one of my many collections. I have a tub of these things. Yeah, this thing must be like a 5-pound brick of coins, and I've got 3 of them because you have to have a fantasy set, you have to have an old timey set, and you gotta have your European looking set. Because I use them as my all-purpose generic subs for, if I'm playing Seven Wonders, I've got a set that looks like old Roman coins. Anything ancient, historic, civilization-y, it's those old Roman coins. Anything fantasy gets the Elven coins, and anything on the high seas or colonizing European, it's going to get the European-looking coins. And they're from Draw Lab, is the company that makes those.
Yeah, I gave the shout out in Discord, but if you can consider the secrets in Oath to be a type of currency, a type of coin, which effectively it is, the upgraded whatever those components are made out of, secrets are incredible. And some of the best component work that I've seen in a game in a long time, outside of the Hammer and Haba's new Hammer Time kids game, which is literally packing a kids game box with a wooden hammer. And as soon as it came out, my kid was swinging it around. Great component, nearly killed me. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit on that. But I think to date, my favorite metal coins are the Lords of Waterdeep, the upgraded coins. I think those are put out by the Broken Token. I think they manufacture those, or maybe it's in partnership with someone else.
They carry them in these days, at least, if nothing else.
Yeah, and those things are ridiculous. They're ornate. They're beautiful. They're really heavy. Even for metal coins in a game, they're incredibly heavy. And the shape, I'm a sucker for weird shaped coins in general, even in the real world. But the moon money, I'm allured by the moon money. It's all about the moon money.
Well, what's cool about those, too, is that they're uniquely tailored to fit that game exactly. Those are the coins that came in the game. Those are the unique cardboard shapes that the game came with, but replicated in metal. Whereas, my generic ones, they're cool, but if I have a game that uses unique fantasy cardboard shapes, that's not what I've got.
Right.
So that one is my second. That was my runner-up. I don't have a set of those, but one of these days I'll get around to it.
For sure. Okay, well, I want to hit on, I had an agenda with a couple more audience questions here, so I'm going to round it out. Just a quick answer, because Emma Plays Green has been a supporter of the Cardboard Herald for a long time and has asked me this a while ago, and I never got around to it. Am I still listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers? I have a tattoo. You see it all the time. I have my Chili Peppers tattoo. They were the band that got me into playing music, so that was kind of the homage with the tattoo. I can still trace the moment in which I was like, I'm picking up a guitar. I'm a big record guy. I have a few of their records and I put them on. I'm not obsessive about their stuff, and the stuff with Josh Klinghoffer recently, it's all right. I'm excited now that John Frusciante's back in the band, because that period is some of the best crafted alt rock music that I can think of, and funk rock and all that kind of stuff. But I also was kind of disappointed by how unceremoniously Josh Klinghoffer was let go from the band. That kind of left a weird taste in my mouth, but I'm excited to see where they go. So I still listen to them. I probably am listening to at least an album, we'll say every month to every other month. And then last, we're going to close this out. This is a positive story here. Not to get too distracted by music. Unless there are any questions that come up from chat, Kyle Frost from Give Pause Hobby. Awesome channel. Check out Kyle's stuff. Awesome solo playthroughs, reviews, that kind of stuff. But in all your years of gaming, what game surprised you the most? And I have an answer for this, but I want to give you the opportunity here first, John. Have you had ample time to contemplate Kyle's vexing question?
I thought about what it would mean, and I'm sure there's a better answer. I'm sure that the real answer is probably at the halfway point of my gaming, where I had seen most of the core mechanics that were out there. There was probably some game that blew me away with how good it was. It was a cut above the rest, and I can't think of what it is off the top of my head, honestly. But what I can go back to is early in my gaming, when we broke out. I'm gonna pretend like it was Dominion, but it was really the Resident Evil deck building game. Which was an early adopter, but at the boom, Dominion comes out, it invents a genre, and then all of a sudden, everything's got a deck building game. And Resident Evil, the deck building game, was a very topical with their game coming out recently, and their number 8 being so hot. But oh my god, like that was my first exposure to a deck building game, and it blew my mind. It was all the core concepts of Magic the Gathering, building a constructed deck. Oh, I gotta have 23 lands because the ratio is this. I need to trim, but it turned that activity into the game itself. Of, well, I need to trim my deck down. I need to trash these cards because I need to get better cards because I need to do this. And oh my god, that gameplay loop was so new at the time and so revolutionary to me that was probably one of my biggest blow your mind moments early in my gaming, in my what I would call my second age of gaming. The early days was Magic and D&D and that stuff when I was a kid, and then maybe about 10 years ago when I really dove back into tabletop gaming as a hobby. That was one of those first moments of just like, wow, there's Catan, there's Risk, and then there's Magic, and that's it, right? Or there's games that completely blow your mind like that.
Yeah. I actually went for Resident Evil as well. I was hoping that you would pick it. There are other really sentimental games that I love, and there's games that have completely blown my mind, notably early on in my game playing, the first time playing Small World, the first time playing Catan, Ninja. Like Ninja was great, set in the Legend of the Five Rings universe, but at the time that we played Resident Evil, it was a licensed game, and I couldn't really wrap my brain around like a licensed game being good. At least like
not a Risk game,
a Bandai. Yeah, and I had worked in a comic shop for a long time. I had seen a lot of games being sold, and a lot of the times the licensed stuff just wasn't that great. Like the best you had was like Versus System for Marvel and DC, which was actually really good as a card game, and then of course like Battlestar Galactica, and then some of the Lovecraftian stuff, which I would discover later. There's actually a lot of really good licensed stuff out there, but Resident Evil. But my buddy, Barry, he was like, yo, I know we play this Versus System game, and you've moved to Juneau at this point, far away. But there's this other game that we've been playing that's, you build the game as you play. And I think before I got a chance to play, Resident Evil, I did play Dominion once, and I got it, and I was like, no, well, I mean, that's cool. That's fine. But Resident Evil, you had an antagonist, and you were racing against flipping that. You break down the door. I want to see who's next. And like the equipping things, the theme was alive, and I could connect it to the game. And like you said, the efficiency engine and all those elements of fantastic, dopamine hits from playing Magic, except condensed into the game itself, was so good. I can remember so many nights in which we stayed up so late playing game after game of Resident Evil. It was ridiculous, and some of my best gaming memories. So as far as sheer anticipated payoff to the delight that came out of a game, most surprising game, sounds like both of us, Resident Evil. That's such a good answer. And another one of those games that I think will be lost to time because of rights and licensing issues and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, and it does not age well, but me 10 years ago breaking that thing out was just like that. This was revolutionary.
Right.
How many times I had 3 shotguns and nothing to shoot them with.
Well, I'm getting some audio feedback from you at this point, John, but that's okay because we're at the very end of the show anyway. It sounds like we went a little bit long. We had some technical difficulties along the way in order to take care of, but that's how it breaks out when you're just learning to stream for the first time. We're still developing our technology as well as our know-how and how to utilize all this stuff. So I really appreciate everyone coming into the chat here. That was really amazing. John, this was a great experience. I'm looking forward to doing this again. We'll probably plan on about the same time next week. We'll announce if there's going to be any changes. Anyone who's watching this who wants to help cultivate this show, for it to be meaningful discussion that you can hang out with and participate in, then give us the feedback. You know, what are the things that you wanted more of in the show and what could you have done without? And have a degree of patience for us as we develop this thing. I'm really excited by the possibilities of what live streaming allows us to do. And the fact that I can take this and this can just be a video that's up on the channel, and that I can potentially take this and put it on the podcast channel as well if I can figure out the gymnastics, the technological gymnastics in order to get that to work, then that's going to be really exciting. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, John, for co-hosting, and proposed topics for next time. I wanted to throw out there, if anyone has any ideas for discussion topics, they don't have to be specifically news oriented, but culling games and management of a collection, I think, is something that John and I could spend hours talking about. Like, how many games should you have, and how do you get rid of games, and how do you know that it's time to get rid of a game that you love? We spent a lot of time talking about that off mic, and I'm sure that we'd have some things to say. Building a collection, Kickstarters, any number of topics. If you want to see some more focused discussion on things, then let us know. And as always, any just casual questions that come up, you ask us about anything. Ask about John's hound helmet in the background and how many Sandor Cleganes he had to... Yeah. How many Sandor Cleganes he had to chop apart or defeat in chicken eating contests in order to win that helmet. We'd be happy to answer those. So I think that's it. John, anything else before we let the folks go?
Nope. Just know that you better watch the chat because I'm out here making promises for next time.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to get on top of it. All right. Thanks, everyone. I will talk to you later, John, and I'll talk to everyone else next week.
All right. Thanks for having me.